Hey, welcome back. Now, in this lecture, we're going to continue with our in-progress state, and we need to convert our time remaining to a time format that shows us minutes and seconds. We should also be showing an announcement so the player knows what state the game is in. And finally, we need to initialize that time remaining value in the HUD so it starts off at the correct value. So let's get started. So we're here in our update game timer function. And all we're doing is getting our time remaining and setting the text to our widget. But what we want is a time format. So we can create a function for this. Let's add a new function, and we're going to call this time remaining format. Now we're going to need to output a value from this. So far we've created functions with input parameters, but we're going to add an output parameter. So let's add one, and this output can be called format time. And this is going to be of the text data type. So we can do all the work in here to convert our time remaining into a good time format of minutes and seconds. So let's think about how we can do this. First, we know we're going to need time remaining. So let's get time remaining. Now, time remaining is in seconds. So how do we know how many minutes are left? Well, there are 60 seconds to a minute. So when time remaining is 60, that's a single minute. So if we divided this by 60, we get the number of minutes. So let's do that. Let's divide by 60. And now we have the number of minutes. But this is a float. We'd like the number of minutes as an integer. So I'm going to floor this. We saw the ceil node, which rounds up to the nearest integer. Floor is similar, only it rounds down. And this is what we want, because when time remaining divided by 60 is less than 1, we want to show 0 minutes, because we're also going to be showing the seconds, right? So we have floor to int 64. And when time remaining divided by 60 is less than 1, it's 0. And when it's greater than 1, it will be rounded down to the nearest integer. So we can comment this part here. And I'm going to comment and say num minutes for number of minutes. So far, so good. Now, we could convert this to text and plug it in, but we're not quite done. This is just the number of minutes. We need seconds as well. So I'm going to keep this to text node, but I'm going to break that connection. And instead, I'm going to use a special node for formatting text. It's called format text. Now, here's how format text works. We put a formatted string in here, which has curly brackets. And inside the curly brackets, we can put some sort of string of characters, such as minutes. And if I hit return, we see that we now have a minutes input. Now, whatever we plug in here for minutes, that's what format text will replace this value here with. Now, so far, that's not very impressive. But if I put a colon here, followed by more curly brackets, and in the second one, maybe I can put seconds. Now we see that I have a seconds input, and format text will now construct a text string and replace both minutes and seconds with the inputs that I provide here. So we need to calculate the number of seconds. Well, this shouldn't be too hard because we have our time remaining. Let's get that. And we know that this is the total number of seconds. Well, we want the remaining number of seconds once we've subtracted off all of the whole minutes from the total. Well, we have the number of minutes here with our floor to int 64 node. We can drag that off. And if we multiply this by 60, then we now have the whole number of minutes. And if we subtract this from time remaining, then we have the remainder of seconds. Think about it. This is the whole number of minutes. We're rounding down here. So if we had, say, 64 seconds remaining, we divide that by 60 and floor it, that result is going to give us 1. Then down here, we're multiplying that 1 by 60 and subtracting it from time remaining. If time remaining was 64 and we're subtracting 60, that leaves us 4 seconds, which is great because now we can format the text with 1 minute, 4 seconds. which is what we got when time remaining was 64. Now we want to convert this to text. So let's drag off and type to text. And we have this to text float, and we can hook this up here. Only there's a problem. We're converting a float to text, and a float has a bunch of digits to the right of the decimal point. Well, we can fix that. Let's expand the drop down here. And down here, we see some options. Now, first we see minimum integral digits. This is the number of digits to the left of the decimal. We're going to set that to 2. That's for the minimum. We also want the maximum to be 2 as well. This way, if the value is 0, we'll have 2 zeros. And if the value is, say, 1, we'll have 0, 1. Now we have the minimum and maximum fractional digits. These are digits to the right of the decimal point. And we can leave these both at 0, and we won't have any fractional digits. This is essentially rounding the number. So we can collapse that back, and now we know that we have the number of seconds as a whole number. So we've now formatted our text. Let's comment this bottom part here and say num seconds. And we can finally return our result in the return node. So we have this function, time remaining format. Let's go back to update game timer. And instead of plugging time remaining straight in, instead we can call time remaining format. So we can remove this to text node, make some room, and call time remaining format here, and take that output, format time, and plug that in. So now that we're calling time remaining format and passing that in, let's hit play. And there we see our time in the correct format. Now we can test it out by setting time remaining to, say, 120. That should be 2 minutes. So let's compile and play this. And once the warm-up is done, there we see the correct time format. All right, so I can set that back to 60 seconds. Now, before we wrap this up, we should add an announcement. So let's go to the game mode HUD. And I'm going to add some text right here to the middle, and I'm going to call this announcement. And I'm going to increase the size and simply set this to, say, announcement. And I'll set this to regular typeface and increase the size here. And I'd like to anchor this to the top in the middle here and set the justification to the middle, set the alignment to 0.5 and 0.5, and set position X to 0. And now we have this in the middle, and I can bring it down just a bit, like so. Now we need to set this. So here in FPS game mode, I'm first going to go to begin play here, and we can initialize the announcement. So I'm going to highlight all these nodes and bring them up, and I'm going to scroll in to where we're adding our HUD to the viewport. And what I can do is get this HUD and get announcement. Of course, I need to make the announcement set as is variable and compile. And I can get the announcement and set text. And I'm simply going to type in get ready. Now you can set this to anything you like. In fact, rather than get ready, I think I'd like to set it to clear the zone. So we're setting that in begin play. Now, as soon as we start the game, I'd like to hide that. So I'm going to go into our start game function. And from our game mode HUD, I'm going to get the announcement and use set text. And I'm going to set it to an empty string so that way we can't see it anymore. So let's compile that and save. And finally, we can set the text when we run out of time. So here in out of time, not only are we setting the time text, I'd like to set the announcement as well. So let's get announcement and call set text. And we'll set the text here to out of time. Okay, so let's compile and test this out. Again, I'm going to set time remaining to 5 seconds to make this easy to test. Now I'm going to hit play, and we see clear the zone. That goes away when we're playing the game. And as soon as we're out of time, we see out of time, and we know we've lost. Now this is looking really good. There's one minor detail, and that's when I hit play, I see that the time remaining is 0. And it doesn't start showing the time until we've started the game. So we can fix that. And I'd like this to be your challenge. I'd like you to initialize the time remaining value. So make sure the HUD shows the correct time even during the warm-up stage, which means you need to do this early, like at the beginning of the game. So begin play. Pause the video and do this now. Okay, so this is a pretty simple challenge. We're going to go to begin play again. Right here, where we're setting the text for the announcement, I'd like to also set the time remaining, which in our game mode HUD is called time text. So let's get our time text. And we're going to use set text. And we need to use our function time remaining format. So let's get that and call it, hook that up, and use our format time output to set the text. So let's see how this looks. And now we see 5 seconds, even in the warm-up stage. And then when the game starts, it's counting down. And then when we're out of time, it's at 0. Okay, so our in progress state is finished, and we can now implement the other states. Awesome job. We're almost finished with the overall structure of the game. I'll see you soon.